big round of applause to Warren Hutchinson from LBI.
Okay, so my name is Warren Hutchinson. I'm from a company called LBI. John's giving you the sort of headline about how many people there are. It's essentially a roll-up over the last 3 years of FramFab, Oyster, Wheel, and LB Icon. We've had the LBI brand for about 1.5 years, and we've developed relationships with a few educational institutions. It's a way of people understanding who we are. I'm just going to talk about me for one slide. I studied at Brunel. I was made in Brunel 10 years ago. Graduated in '98, studied product design. I spent 5 years working in digital media at Yale.com before going to PA Consulting to wear a suit and learn some consulting skills for a year before finding a home at Oyster, which became LBI, which was in Clerkenwell, is now in Brick Lane, in the Truman Brewery. There are about 15 people from Brunel, actually, at LBI. So that's what I'm going to talk about for my Pecha Kucha, which is, what does Made in Brunel mean? Made in Brunel is almost a brand for this university, so hopefully what I'm going to say is on message. If not, it's a personal reflection on what being Made in Brunel is about and the tools that I've been given over the last 10 years and the colleagues that I work with who are from Brunel. So, a bit of research. I spoke to my network, my alumni, my colleagues at LBI. I asked them a few things about, what are your takeaways? What do you remember that was great? What was bad? What do you think you've been given? What makes you different? And it was really interesting, actually, how people responded and the consistency of message that came back. The first one was, I thought I was going to university in London, which is obviously a lie. But there were all these stories about, I remember making models. I was awake for the whole final week. I took Pro Plus to stay awake and it knocked me out. Someone in here stuck their arm to the table with super glue. Very committed, but these are all sort of fun stories that people remember about Brunel. But there's a serious thing. People remember the subject breadth, the things you study, particularly in product design. I did A-levels in maths and design and English literature, and I started at Brunel studying maths and physics and electronics and material science and model making and woodwork and life drawing and design history. And that head stretch for me was a real killer, and it was interesting. Everyone else said the same thing. God, I just didn't know the breadth of the subject. The other thing was the intensity of the timetable. My friend studying history at Reading was doing 8 hours a week. My friend studying French with management at Royal Holloway was doing 15 hours a week. I was timetabled for 35, and it was unfair, apart from the usual Wednesday afternoon off to do sport, which I think should be introduced to the business world. And the other thing people said was the sheer cost of materials. Now, I always remember the first tutorial we had where some guy comes in with a really crappily mounted board, stuck down with Pritt stick and cut out with scissors. He learns very quickly to buy spray mount, use scalpels, keep them sharp, and then from there you start buying really expensive equipment. So everyone leaves Brunel in debt. Blown chips, loads of spray paint and loads of glue. But like vegetables, these things that you think are bad for you are actually very, very good for you. And Brunel designers leave with an awareness about the whole manufacturing process. They understand business, they understand marketing, and that awareness makes them a very unique brand of designer, which is something that can plug into any team. They're very, very adaptable kids. The next slide will be about response to the timetable intensity. So, you start in your first year and you start doing 35 hours, you're learning to spin plates straight away. You're immediately learning to see efficiencies in your projects and make sure your mechatronics project times up with your major, so you're not spending too much time doing one thing. Which is, again, it's very applicable to the design world. Now, you get out what you put in, is what she says. Don't think about the image behind that one too much, but I'll put it in your head. So, you spend a lot of money on materials. That's about a commitment to quality in yourself and a sense of pride, which, again, is another key sort of brand asset, if you like, of the Brunel design student. And some nice things. People remember the parties. I remember in my first year, someone flooded the third floor of a corridor with these balls, about 3 feet deep, to have a snow party. We were a bit isolated in Runnymede at the time, so we had very creative ways of having parties. There's a legendary beach party that was held in the bar where someone imported sand, they put plastic all around the bar and filled it with water, and we actually had a great beach party. All driving towards this idea of a sense of community. When you start, the first year start working with the fourth years. So the first years get introduced to the quality of work that's coming out. The fourth years get some minions to boss around and help. But what's interesting is, unlike other courses where you sort of start and you know your own peer group, here you know the 3 years above and the 3 years below. So your personal Brunel network is quite wide. really driving towards this sense of pride. Not that everyone's, Peacock's quite an arrogant image, I'm afraid, but there's this thing about pride, having a real sense of, I really care about how I'm portrayed through my work in and amongst my peers. And I always remember going to friends' room, going, oh, you got your hand in, let's have a look at your work. Oh, shit, it's better than mine. Back to my room. And, of course, all that does is just push the work quality higher and higher. And no, they're not murdering gangsters. It's this thing about the wolf in Pulp Fiction. He's the guy who can just, he can do it. He can sort it out. So Brunel students, again, because of the stuff they've learned, are quite adaptable. And if they need to learn it, they will learn it. I learned to program a PIC. I hate electronics just to get my major to work. And that's a story that everyone here will talk about. So when I asked them, again, what was your main takeaway? I don't know where that is, so it's not a plug for the Jasmine. What was your main takeaway, and how, in your sort of professional life, do you reflect on your time at Brunel? Everybody said pretty much the same thing, which was, no matter what I did at Brunel, whether I studied product design, multimedia, industrial design, engineering, I got a lot of tools still from all my model making days, but you leave with a toolkit. You leave with a toolkit that makes you an adaptable, collaborative person who can plug into most teams and work. And if you've got gaps in your toolkit, you know how to fill them, or you know who to ask, and that was the real key thing. It's the beginning of the journey, leaving really, but you're leaving with a really, really good set of tools. And the obvious image really to say at the degree show, the bar just keeps getting higher. I come back to this every year, and every year the event itself gets better, though the wine doesn't. But the quality of the work gets a lot better. I mean, you really go and scrutinise the models and things that are out there, because they're really well made. And you talk to the students about the work, the depth of knowledge about the complete product development cycle. Their understanding about the problem is really, really thorough. So if I was looking for somebody to work, which we probably are, what do I want to see on a resume? Two things, really: creativity and intelligence. If you're intelligent, you learn anything. If you're creative, you will apply it and you'll solve problems. But things around collaboration, adaptability, and a sense of pride in work is a really important facet. So if I was an employer, this is what I'd be doing this evening. I'd be going shopping, and I'd go and talk to people, and I'd really, get into the stuff that they're doing, because, you'll have some really interesting conversations, and you'll just find out really what makes the DNA of these guys. If I was a parent, which I'm not sure if there are any, or if I'm a student here as well, one thing I'd be walking out is just feeling proud. That's me.